The sky turned red when the ship broke apart in the atmosphere of an unknown planet. The human pilot, Lieutenant Ray Carter, had only seconds to react before his escape pod launched him into the thick jungle below. He didn't know the planet's name, or if he'd even survive the crash. His hands were shaking. Blood ran from a cut on his forehead, and he could hear something, voices deep and sharp, echoing from somewhere nearby. Ray opened the hatch slowly and crawled out. The air was hot and thick, filled with strange floral smells and buzzing sounds. Trees stretched so high they blocked the sun, their leaves glowing with faint blue veins. He pulled out the emergency beacon, but the signal was weak. His communication link to Earth was gone. He didn't even get the chance to take one full step when he heard a growl behind him, spinning fast. He raised his arm to block, but a spear slammed into the ground next to his foot. Figures dropped from the trees, tall and muscular, with bronze armor made from bone and metal. Their eyes glowed green, and their faces were painted with war symbols. Before he could move again, he was surrounded. One of the women, taller than the others, stepped forward with slow, heavy steps. Her dark red hair was braided with feathers and claws, and a massive blade rested on her back. She looked at Ray like he was not a threat but a tool. Something strange and valuable. He tried to speak, but they didn't understand his words. They looked at each other, then at him, like he was a prize fallen from the stars. Suddenly, a net made of glowing vines was thrown over him, and before he could scream, everything went black. When Ray opened his eyes again, he was in a stone chamber lit by soft firelight. He was tied to a tall wooden pole, but his wounds had been cleaned, and a sweet-smelling salve had been rubbed onto his forehead. Around him stood more of the warrior women, their armor gleaming, and their eyes watching him with curiosity and hunger. One of them stepped forward, this one younger, with silver tattoos across her shoulders. She placed her hand on his chest, and said something he didn't understand. Her touch was warm and soft, but her voice was sharp, commanding. Another woman entered, this one older, her armor darker and heavier. The younger ones bowed their heads. Ray could feel the shift in the air. The leader had arrived. She walked slowly around him, studying his face, his arms, his eyes. Then she spoke in a low voice, and the others cheered. Ray had no idea what they said, but he didn't like the sound of it. The older leader pulled out a device from her belt. It buzzed and lit up and held it to his neck. There was a sting, a flash, and suddenly, he understood her words. You are male, fertile, strong, she said with a smile. You will serve the bloodline of Talrena, mother of warriors. You will not be harmed, but you cannot leave. You are now royal breeder of the High Huntress clan. Ray's mind spun. Wait, what? I'm a pilot, a soldier, not whatever you think I am. I need to go home. You crashed into our land. She replied calmly. You belong to the victor now. You are a gift from the sky. A gift must be used, not wasted. The other women stepped closer, whispering and laughing among themselves. Ray felt the heat of their eyes, the power of their presence. He had landed on a planet of powerful warrior women who saw him, not as a man but a resource. A drum sounded in the distance, and the leader raised her hand. The women quieted. She pointed to the gate, then to Ray. Take him to the temple. Prepare him for the ceremony. Ray shouted, struggled against the glowing ropes, but they held tight. The younger warrior with silver tattoos gave him a soft look, almost like pity or interest. She leaned close and whispered, be strong. It will be easier that way. They dragged him through the great stone halls of the fortress. On the walls were paintings human-like males worshipped by armored women, standing on pedestals, their faces painted in gold. The realization hit Ray like ice down his spine. He wasn't just a prisoner. He was part of an ancient tradition, a living offering to continue a warrior bloodline. And now that he was here, they had no plans to let him go. His escape pod had saved him from death, but delivered him into a fate he never imagined. Asterisk. Ray was taken deep into the heart of the fortress where the walls changed from rough stone to polished, black crystal. The warriors didn't speak to him, but they watched him closely as they led him through doors marked with glowing symbols. He could feel the heat in the air growing stronger, like the whole place was alive with power. He tried to memorize the path, but the twisting turns and echoing halls confused him. There were no windows, only the flicker of flame and the soft hum of strange machines built into the stone. At last, they stopped in front of a circular room with high ceilings and strange red vines crawling across the walls. Inside the room stood 5 warriors in ceremonial robes, their faces hidden behind masks carved like the faces of animals. In the center of the room was a pool of glowing water, surrounded by symbols etched into the floor. The younger warrior with silver tattoos stepped forward again and placed a hand on Ray's chest. "You will be purified," she said quietly. "This is tradition before a royal claim." Ray clenched his jaw and pulled back. "I'm not agreeing to anything. You can't just decide I'm yours. I'm a human being, not a breeding machine." She gave him a look that wasn't cruel, but it wasn't soft either. "On this world, the stars choose. You came here on fire, survived death, and landed among warriors. That means something to us. To fight the stars is to fight fate." Before he could protest again, the other warriors grabbed him and pulled him into the pool. The water was warm, almost too warm, and it glowed faintly with blue light. He shouted, kicked, but the moment it touched his skin, the heat turned to calm, like invisible arms wrapping around him. The water didn't just clean his body, it made his mind clear. Images flashed in his head, memories, strange symbols, feelings that weren't his. For a moment, he saw the faces of the past men who had stood here before him, some proud, some afraid, some peaceful. When they pulled him out, his skin was dry. Almost instantly, the ropes were gone, but the guards remained near. The older leader stepped into the room now, her mask off, her eyes sharp and glowing softly in the dim light. "You have seen the past," she said. "Now you will walk with one of our own, learn our ways, and accept your purpose. It is your honor to bring strength to the bloodline. If you refuse, your body will live, but your spirit will be broken." Ray looked around him. 5 warriors, all armed, all taller than him, all stronger. There was no escape here. Not yet. He had to think, to buy time, to find a way out. "Fine," he said. Slowly, "I learn, but I won't be anyone's tool. I need answers. I need to know what this place is and why it's built like a prison." The older leader smiled faintly. "You ask like a warrior. That is a good sign. You will walk with Shira, the one who first touched your chest. She speaks your tongue, and she knows the rituals. Be careful with your words, some ears are sharper than blades." Shira stepped beside him and motioned for him to follow. The other warriors left the room, and she guided him through a long hallway where crystal panels showed moving images, scenes of battles, hunts, and massive beasts bowing to warrior queens. "This was not always our way," Shira said softly. "Long ago, our males were strong, but they vanished in the wars. The few who came from the stars were gifts, signs of favor. We kept their line alive through honor and bonding. But not all bonds were kind. Ray watched one image where a human male smiled and stood beside a warrior woman. In another, a man screamed behind a gate, his face pale with fear. "And what about me?" he asked. "Which one do you want me to be? The happy pet or the silent prisoner?" Shira looked at him with something close to sadness. "That is for you to choose. But the path of kindness is open if you walk it with respect. I do not enjoy breaking things that are already hurting." They stopped at a large chamber filled with cushions, soft lights, and the smell of fruit and spice. It looked more like a home than a cage. "You will stay here," she said. "You will eat, rest, and train. Tomorrow, you meet the Queen Mother. She will test your soul." Ray sat down slowly, his thoughts spinning. His stomach growled, but he didn't reach for the food yet. He looked at Shira and asked, "Do you believe in this system? That I belong here just because I fell from the sky?" She turned to leave, then paused at the door. "I believe in strength, but I also believe the stars sometimes send change in the shape of a man." When the door shut, Ray finally let himself breathe. He wasn't safe, but he wasn't dead either. And if he played this right, he might just find a way to turn this world's strange rules in his favor. Ray woke up to soft music echoing through the chamber. Strange instruments hummed and rang in patterns that felt like messages rather than songs. His body was sore from yesterday's struggle, but the bed was soft and his wounds had been cleaned. Again during the night, a tray of fruits, meats, and glowing water sat near his bed. Untouched, he stared at the food for a long time, unsure if it was safe. Then his stomach made the decision for him. He picked up a fruit shaped like a small glowing apple and bit into it. It tasted like honey and mint, sweet and strange but not unpleasant. He finished it slowly, thinking about everything that had happened. Shira entered the room without knocking. She was wearing lighter armor now, her silver tattoos shining faintly in the morning light. Her expression was unreadable, but her eyes studied him closely. "You ate," she said. "Good, it means your spirit hasn't broken yet." Ray wiped his mouth and stood up. "I'm not broken, I'm just waiting. You said I'd meet the Queen Mother today. What kind of test is this supposed to be?" Shira nodded and handed him a new set of clothes-light robes made from soft, breathable fabric with symbols stitched into the collar. "The Queen Mother sees what others cannot. She looks inside. If you carry hate, she will taste it. If you lie, she will burn it out of you. You must be calm when you stand before her." Ray took the robes and changed in silence. The hallway outside his room was lined with tall spears and statues of warrior queens. As he walked beside Shira, he noticed how the guards stepped back slightly when she passed, giving her silent respect. She had more power than she let on. They reached a giant door carved with the image of a woman holding the stars in her hands. The door opened on its own, and warm air spilled out like breath from a beast. Inside, the Queen Mother waited on a throne made of roots, bones, and shining stone. She was older than the others but still powerful, her body tall and firm, her face marked with long golden paint. Her eyes were pure white, glowing softly as if she no longer needed light to see. She raised one hand, and everyone else in the room knelt except Ray. He stood frozen, unsure if he should copy them or not. The Queen Mother smiled faintly. "Let him remain standing," she said in perfect English. "The stars do not kneel, and neither shall the one they chose." Her voice was deep, slow, and strong. It wasn't loud, but it filled the room like thunder waiting in the clouds. She gestured for Ray to step forward. "Come closer, Starborn. I wish to see your truth." Ray swallowed hard and walked until he was standing right in front of her. Her hand reached out and touched his chest gently. It felt like ice and fire at the same time. His heart skipped a beat. He gasped as a sharp pain stabbed through his head. Suddenly, memories played like echoes. His childhood, his first flight, his crash, and the faces of the warriors who had brought him here. Then it was gone. The Queen Mother pulled her hand back and spoke softly. "You are angry, but not cruel. You are scared, but not weak. You speak of freedom, but you do not know what it costs here. You were not sent to breed. Not only, you were sent to change the blood." Ray blinked, confused. "What does that mean?" "I don't understand change the blood." The Queen Mother stood and walked down from the throne. "Our warriors grow stronger, but also colder. We have forgotten softness, compassion, balance. The fire burns hot, but without water, it becomes ash. Your spirit carries the storm, wind, and rain together. You are not here to be a prisoner. You are here to be the storm that brings life back." Ray didn't know what to say. He looked at Shira, but she remained still. Her eyes lowered. The Queen Mother stepped close again and placed a necklace around his neck, shaped like a ring of stars. "You will now walk freely. You are under my protection. Anyone who touches you with harm shall answer to me." The guards stood and pounded their chests. Shira stepped forward and bowed slightly. The Queen Mother turned back to Ray with one final sentence. "Your test begins now, not in this room, but in every step you take after it. Choose your path. Human, we will watch." Outside the chamber, Ray finally exhaled. Shira walked beside him again. Slower this time. "You did well," she said. "No man has stood before her without falling to his knees in 100 years. She's not what I expected." Ray replied, "She's powerful, but she didn't threaten me. She spoke like she wanted me to stay, not as a prisoner, but as something else." Shira gave a faint nod. "Now the warriors will test you in their own way. Not all of them will accept you. Some see you as weakness wrapped in skin. You will need to prove you are not." Ray looked up at the glowing sky through a crystal window. This world was dangerous, beautiful, and ruled by strength. But somewhere deep inside, he felt something shifting. For the first time, it wasn't just about escaping anymore. He wanted to understand why the stars had brought him here, and what kind of man he had to become to survive among queens. Asterisk. The training fields were alive with motion when Ray stepped outside the crystal halls. Warrior women moved in perfect rhythm, sparring with staffs, blades, and strange spinning weapons that whistled through the air. Their feet crushed the stone. With every strike, their roars sharp like thunder across the plains. Shira led him to a tall arena built into a cliffside, where the wind howled and banners waved with symbols of beasts and blood. A circle of warriors stood waiting for him, their arms crossed, expressions hard. These were not the gentle ones. These were the ones who still saw him as an outsider. "You want respect," Shira whispered to him. "Then earn it here. Show them you are more than just skin and seed." Ray stepped into the ring wearing a light tunic and arm guards. No weapons were given. Across from him stood a warrior with scars across her jaw and arms like iron pillars. She cracked her neck and smiled darkly. "She is Mara," Shira said from behind the ring. "She volunteered to test your worth. If you fall quickly, they will not bother with you again. But if you endure, just endure, they will watch you with new eyes." Ray didn't answer. He focused on his breathing, remembered the self-defense drills back on Earth. and tried to quiet his fear. The drum sounded once, and Mara charged like a storm. Her fist hit like a hammer, and Ray barely dodged. The second strike caught his ribs, sending pain through his side like fire. He stumbled back, but kept his feet planted. The crowd shouted, some laughing, some watching in silence. He blocked her next blow with both arms, and twisted his body to lessen the impact. It didn't stop the pain, but it kept him standing. Mara narrowed her eyes, surprised. She threw a kick, fast and brutal, but Ray ducked under it and shoved her shoulder, just enough to throw off her balance. It wasn't a victory, but it was a message. He wasn't just going to lie down and take it. Blood dripped from his lip. His chest heaved, but his legs stayed strong. He faced her again, fists raised, body trembling but spirit unbroken. The match lasted 3 more minutes before the elder warrior signaled its end. Ray collapsed to one knee, breathing like he'd run through fire. Mara stepped forward, pulled him up by the arm, and gave him a single nod. He stood, she said to the others. Not fast, not strong, but he stood. That is enough for today. Some warriors clapped, others just turned away. But something had changed. Ray wasn't invisible anymore. He was seen. Shira helped him walk back through the corridors, her arm around his back to steady him. You did well, she said. Your bruises will speak louder than words. They do. Not expect you to defeat us. They expect you to earn your place. Ray winced as he sat down in his chamber, sweat dripping down his neck. I didn't come here to fight for respect. I came here to survive, maybe escape. But now I don't even know what I want anymore. Shira handed him a drink, cool and bitter, which eased the ache in his ribs. She sat across from him and studied his face. Then ask yourself what feels right. Escape is one kind of freedom, but building something new is another. You can't fly forever. Ray, sooner or later you must choose where to land. That night, as he lay in bed, Ray stared at the carved ceiling. He remembered Earth metal ships, flashing lights, his quiet bunk aboard the fleet. It felt like another life now. Here, the stars were close, and every heartbeat mattered. The next morning, a surprise visitor entered his chamber. It was not Shira, it was Mara. She carried a wooden box and placed it beside his bed without a word. Ray sat up, blinking. Didn't expect to see you again so soon, she smirked. The others say you're slow but stubborn. I can use that. You're going to train with me now, every morning. You need strength, or you'll break the first time the Queen's champion tests you. Ray tilted his head. Champion? What champion? Mara opened the box, revealing training gloves, weight bands, and small bone blades. Before you are fully accepted, before the Queen allows you into the royal bloodline, you must pass the gauntlet. One fight, one trial, no rules. You win, you stay. You lose, you're no longer protected. The Queen Mother made it law centuries ago. Ray stared at the gear, heart pounding again. So it's not over, it's just beginning. Mara nodded. This is the fire that makes iron strong. You have 2 weeks to become more than a man. You must become something they fear losing. Not just a body, but a choice. Ray took the gloves in hand and tightened the straps. He didn't know what would happen next, but deep down, something in him had changed. He wasn't just surviving anymore. He was becoming something new, and this time he wasn't going to run from it. The sun rose red and bright as Ray stood at the edge of the cliff training circle. Sweat poured down his neck. Muscles screamed from days of punishment, but his fists didn't tremble anymore. Mara stood beside him, arms crossed, watching with The sharp eye of a commander who expected more than just effort. For the last 10 days, she had trained him harder than anyone on Earth ever had. He had run with weights tied to his back, fought blindfolded, learned to move with speed and silence. Sometimes he collapsed and coughed up blood, but she never let him rest too long. If you want to survive the gauntlet, then fight like death is always watching, she said every morning. Ray had started to understand their way respect was earned by pain, by grit, by proving you wouldn't break when everyone expected you to. He hated the bruises, the cuts, but something inside him began to shift. His body grew harder, his movements faster, his thoughts sharper. He no longer felt like a prisoner in silk robes. He was becoming something else, something that could survive here, and maybe even lead. Shira watched too, often from the shadows, never interrupting. She had changed as well, less distant, more curious. She asked questions about Earth now, about cities and oceans and music. At night, she sat outside Ray's chamber and listened as he spoke about sunsets over metal towers and warm rain on cracked pavement. One evening, as they sat together under the stars, she handed him a small carving, a piece of soft stone shaped like two stars entwined. "This is for warriors who survive the gauntlet," she said. "It means you belong to the tribe not as a gift, but as a soul. I believe you will need it soon." Ray held the carving tight in his fist and looked at her. "You believe in me more than I do sometimes. Why?" Shira's voice was quiet. "Because the Queen Mother said you were not sent here by accident. And because when you stand, even broken, you look forward, not back. That's rare, even among us." The next morning, drums echoed across the cliffs. A horn sounded from the tower. It was time. Ray walked through the fortress halls wearing bone armor fitted to his body. Every piece had been shaped for him alone, light, flexible, strong. The warriors he passed did not mock him now. Some nodded. Others watched with respect. In the main arena, thousands had gathered. Warriors lined the stone steps, shouting, roaring, beating their chests. At the far end stood the Queen Mother, tall and silent, her white eyes locked on the ring below. Ray stepped into the circle, heart pounding like war drums in his chest. The wind carried dust around him, and the sun burned above like a spotlight from the gods. Then his opponent entered, a giant of a warrior, nearly 7 feet tall, muscles rippling like stone, eyes painted black. This was Vexa, the Queen's champion. She had never been defeated in ritual combat. Her name whispered like a warning across the tribes. She carried no weapons. She didn't need them. Ray stared at her and felt the pressure of the crowd, the weight of every lesson, every bruise, every word Mara had shouted at him in training. He couldn't win with strength, but he didn't need to. He had something else now, the Queen Mother raised her hand. The crowd silenced instantly. Then she dropped it. Vexa charged without a roar. Like a beast unleashed, Ray ducked under her first strike, rolled, and kicked her ankle, but it was like hitting a pillar. She turned fast and grabbed him by the arm, lifting him off the ground like a toy. He twisted, using his weight, and slammed his elbow into her throat, not to hurt, but to loosen her grip. He dropped to the ground and swept her leg, making her stumble for half a second. The crowd gasped, danced back, breathing hard, heart thundering in his ears. She rushed again, but now he didn't try to match her power. He moved, dodged, jabbed, used her speed against her. Every hit she landed hurt, but he never stopped getting back up. Blood poured from his nose, his ribs cracked, but he never fell for long. At last, Vexa slowed just slightly, but it was enough. Ray fainted left, then slammed his shoulder into her chest. She fell back a step, shocked. Then he dropped to one knee in front of her, lifted both arms, and roared. Not in pain but in defiance. Arena went silent. Vexa stood over him, breathing hard, blood on her lip. Then, without a word, she placed her hand on his shoulder and raised it high. The crowd erupted. The Queen Mother stood and nodded once. It was done. Ray had not won the gauntlet by brute force, but he had survived it with fire and fury. He had proved he was more than a lost man from the stars. He was now part of the tribe, and everything was about to change. Asterisk, the fortress buzzed with celebration after the gauntlet. Fires burned in large bowls. Music echoed across the cliffs, and warriors danced under the open sky. For the first time since his crash, Ray was not watched like a stranger or handled like property. He walked through the crowds, his body aching, but his head held high. Some warriors touched his arm in greeting. Others raised fists in silent respect. Even those who had doubted him now saw what he had become, not just a survivor, but a symbol. A man from the stars who had stood in the ring and endured the wrath of Vexa. Shira found him near the edge of the terrace where the wind whispered and the stars burned bright. She didn't speak at first, just stood beside him. Her presence calm and steady like always. Ray didn't need words from her tonight. Her silence was a comfort. Then she placed her hand on his and said softly, "The Queen Mother will speak with you at sunrise. She has made her decision." Ray looked down at their joined hands, then out toward the jungle beyond the walls. "I already know what I want," he said. "I just don't know if I'm strong enough to hold it." Shira turned to him with a small smile. "You stood against Vexa. You stood against your fear. That's more than strength. That's purpose." The next morning, golden light poured into the chamber where Ray stood before the Queen Mother once more. Her eyes, still glowing white, studied him with quiet power. She held a scroll in one hand, wrapped in silver ribbon, and a small blade in the other. "You passed the gauntlet," she said, "by blood, fire, and spirit. Now comes the final choice, not mine, not the clan's, but yours. Will you remain and bond with the tribe? Or shall you be sent back into the stars, marked forever, but free?" Ray didn't answer right away. He thought of earth-cold steel walls, orders barked through headsets, a bed that never felt like home. Then he thought of Shira's voice, Mara's fists, the wind across the cliffs, the fire in the eyes of warriors who once wanted him gone but now stood behind him. He stepped forward and took the scroll in one hand and the blade in the other. "I choose to stay, not because I was captured, but because I was found. I came here falling, but I'm standing now. I belong here." The Queen Mother's lips curled into a rare smile. "Then let it be written. You are no longer starborn alone. You are Ray of the Flamebound, brother to the Blade, keeper of the storm, bloodline to the Queens." She pressed her palm to his shoulder and marked him with a new symbol burned into his skin, glowing red like the sun over the mountains. A symbol of belonging, of fire, of rebirth. The celebration that followed was louder than the last. Even Vexa joined the feast, nodding once at Ray before returning to her food. Ray sat with Shira, her shoulder brushing against his as they listened to drums and watched the flames rise high. He leaned toward her and said, "So what now? Am I supposed to help grow the royal bloodline?" Shira raised an eyebrow, amused. "Eventually, perhaps. But bonding is not a task, it is a choice. The Queen Mother gave you that freedom. We do not force what must grow with trust." Ray looked into her eyes, bright and fierce and curious. "And you?" What do you choose?" Shira didn't answer with words. She leaned closer and rested her forehead against his, a gesture sacred among her people, a promise, a beginning, a silent bond forming in fire and breath. Days passed. Rey was given a place among the warriors. Not in rank, but in value. He trained with them, learned their history, shared his stories of Earth. And slowly, the tribe began to change. The younger warriors listened more. The older ones questioned their traditions. Something new was blooming stronger. Because it had come from both fire and gentleness. From Earth and from this wild world. Rey stood one evening on the edge of the cliffs, watching the stars. His escape pod was long buried under vines, forgotten like the war that sent him here. He didn't miss the ship anymore. He missed nothing. He had found what he never knew he needed: connection, purpose, family. In a place of blades and battle cries, he had found peace. And in the heart of warrior queens, a human had not just survived. He had chosen to stay and become legend.